Hi and welcome to this video where I will show you how I created these Velociraptor babies vocalizations from the Barbie dolls. But before we dive into that, I want to add my 2 cents to the discussion about however you should use sound effects libraries for your designs, or you should create all the sounds yourself and program them in synths and record a source for them and everything. And let's start with a short, maybe a bit exaggerated analogy. Let's imagine that you are a media composer. So you compose music for TV and games and commercials and trailers and stuff like that. And your publisher reaches out to you and says, "We're about to do a chamber strings album. Would you be interested to be a part of it?" And you immediately get these ideas of, well, I can write it like this. I can arrange it like this. I will use these kinds of harmonies. But then you realize, well, how can I make this sound of chamber strings? So you think, well, there must be some contact libraries for this, right? So you research a little bit and you find a couple of really great contact libraries. But then you start to think, well, that's not like really true to how it sounded back then. They didn't use samples back then. So I should probably do it in a different way. Maybe I should hire just a small string section to do this instead. So you hire a small string section and you give them the sheet music and you record it and it sounds great. But then you start to think, well, they add a lot of their own emotion and their own characteristics, the players, to this. It's not entirely me who creates this anymore. Maybe it would be better if it was me who played it instead of other players. So you get your hands on a great violin and you start to practice, and eventually then you realize, well, now I'm standing here building my own violin, and the assignment was that, can I be a part of this chamber strings album? So you're a bit off from the assignment. This is of course a little bit silly and way exaggerated, but it kind of paints the picture that we are also faced with as sound designers. We can get the assignment to create the sound design for a movie, and then they just want us to create the sound design for the movie. They really don't care if we have created that with like putting the mics into a cucumber and tossed it out of the window from an airplane. I mean, if that's necessary to create a sound, then that's what we do. But that's not always the case that we have to do that. So, I mean, if I were assigned to create a sound design for Jurassic Park, I would start at my sound libraries and scroll through them, see if I can find sounds there that I get inspired by and feels like they can fit the picture. And if I can't, then I would do research and see if I can find another sound library that can fill out and complement maybe, or add to the table of the sound design. And if I can't find any other sound effects libraries, then I would of course start to do my own stuff. But to me, that's how I would approach it. I would just try to serve the product as fast as I could with the tools that were enabled to me. And then of course there are a lot of situations where you need to record and process your own sound. Say for example that you are selling your own sound effects libraries, then you need to have recorded the sound yourself. You can't resell any other copyrighted material, so you need to record it, process it, create the sound effects, and then you can sell it. So depending on the kind of project that you're in, use the tools that you are given and are allowed for that kind of project, and just try to serve the project. That's like my point here. Serve the project the best you can with the tools that are available to you. And that brings me back to this video. Why am I doing this kind of weird examples and this kind of weird experiments if I just use sample libraries whenever I can? Well, it's kind of weird because these kinds of exercises and experiments are really, really great to do in order to work with sample libraries. Because the truth is, you are getting assignments to create very abstract and weird sounds from time to time. I heard from another sound designer in an interview that he was assigned he got the assignment to make the sound of an octopus that was pulled out of a nose of a human. And Well, all right, I will just look into my sample libraries and see where my octopus pulled out of the noses are. Well, you can't find those kinds of sounds, and that's the truth many times. You can find sounds that has like the right texture or the right emotional impact or the right rhythmic impact or the right power, and you can start to use one part from this and one part from this, and you can blend them together and build your design out of that. So it's very uncommon that you just can pick a sound and yep, that's it. That sounds great. I'm done. You often need to build it out, and you can have like a couple of hundreds or thousands tracks if you're doing a bigger project of it. So an exercise like this, when you hear a source sound and you get like excited and inspired and your imagination starts to run, well, this could be like this. So with the Barbie dolls, for example, I heard the sound and I felt immediately this could be some kind of creature vocalization, some dinosaur or some other stuff. And I just want to like run with that idea and see what I can create of it. Because then when you sit at your sample library and you start to scroll through everything and you find different sounds, you can immediately hear that, oh, that's the part, that's the emotional impact that I want. I pick that sound. Oh, that's the texture that I want. I pick that sound. Oh, that has the power that I want. I pick that sound. And then you start to build out your ingredients that you then can build your full design out of. So it's really, really great exercise, and I highly encourage you to do this. But just so you know, I wouldn't go ahead and do it like this if I were assigned to do the sound design like this for a movie, for example. But I highly encourage you to do exercises like this, and feel free to share it if you do anything and you post it anywhere. I would really love to hear what you are coming up with. So with that out of the way, let's dive in to see how I created the Velociraptor babies out of the Barbie dolls. Right, so when I do designs like this, I tend to think of them in 3 different steps. And I try to think of these different steps like individual sections that I just try to perform and execute as well as I can. So the first step is to record the source recordings, and then I bring those into the computer in my DAW and design those, and then I take them and edit them. So first step, record; second step, design; third step, edit them to the visuals. So we will just go through these different steps and what I did to it, and just start with a raw recording. So when I do a recording like this, I just do them as like one long sausage file of for each kind of sound from the prop, if that makes sense. So in this case, I had the head turning of the doll. That's like one source from the prop, and then later on I did some hip movements of it also, and that's like one other sausage file. And then I just try to create as much different versions and textures and movements and fast movements, slow movements as I can from that prop, and that's like sound from that prop. So here I twisted the head really fast, really slow, and just try to get as much different characters and movements out of it as I possibly can, because we will use this to create so many different vocalizations later on in the chain. So I just want to have a lot of content to work with, basically. So the raw source recording sounds like this. So a bunch of different versions and just twisting and turning on the head, basically. One thing here is that I haven't denoised the sound, and afterwards I felt like I should have done it, but since this was just an exercise for me, I didn't like do that, basically. I just wanted to get into the exercise itself. But if I would have put it out somewhere and use it in some kind of project, I would have denoised this before going in and process it, to record it, edit it, and just like remove the silence pieces of it and denoise it, so I have a cleaner version. But yeah, you will basically have to just live with that. It's a bit of a noisy recording, and it's a part of the process from here on. Before we take a look at how I designed the raw recordings into designed assets, I want to let you know that if you want some tips along the way for how you can become an even better storyteller with sound, there is a free guide linked in the descriptions below. This takes you through 9 different ways that you can use storytelling to your advantage, and how you can think about storytelling with your sound, and all of that is applicable as soon as you work with sound together with visuals in one way or another, even if it's in a commercial or if it's in games or if it's to a movie. It's all the same. You need to start to think about how do my sound complement the story that we're telling together with the visuals, and this guide takes you through all of that. So if you want that, it's free, download it, it's linked in the description. And now let's take a look at how I design the raw recordings. So when I have recorded the sounds that I felt like I had enough content for this purpose of creating the Velociraptor, and just think that I just record a little bit more than I think I need, because there is always something that you have missed and you haven't thought about, and you need something more to add and spice up something with. So I record a little bit more than I think, and then I just bring it into my DAW, and I use Reaper. That's my go-to. I love it, but you can of course use whatever DAW you like. So my process from here on is to process this full-length sausage file, so to speak. So I continue the idea that I just want to create a lot of content that I then can add it to the Velociraptors and edit to the visual representation of them. And at this stage I start to look at the visuals even though I don't design to them. So I just bring them up like this, so I get a feeling of like the creature that I'm designing to. So in this case it's a baby Velociraptor. It's playful and it plays around with his friends. Or basically this is the good one of them. All of the other three, I think there are, just playing around and don't listen. He's kind of mad at them. So we want like a bit of vocalization that has like this. He's like shattering at them and yelling at his friends that, hey, come on here. Get here, we're about to listen to our daddy, so to speak. So that's what we're aiming for. So I want that character out of it, but I don't think of syncing this to the picture. I just want the right emotion, the right texture out of it, but then we will take care of the sync later on in the process when we start to edit it. But in this stage I just start to think about like the attributes of the creature that I'm designing to. So I'm starting with a vocal rider. This just smooths out the volume of the clip a little bit. I don't want to compress it. I just want to like even it out a tiny bit so it doesn't change the sound. But the next plugin here changes the sound quite a lot. This is a vocoder that's triggered by this track underneath here. So I have a serum here with a wavetable that's modulating and working together with the vocoder as the modulator. And here I just play around with different sounds within the synth, and I also try out different things in the MIDI here that affects the sound also. So we listen to it without the vocoder first, and then with vocoder. So it reduces the volume quite a lot, but it gets so much more like vocal character, because that's what I felt we are missing in the sound from the raw recordings. It has really cool like gnarly texture and the rhythmical like vibrant texture of it, but we need to add more tonal elements to it and more like vocal chords elements to it and formants to it. So you will see that throughout the process that we are working with modulation in different ways that we use from the incoming volume, basically. So we use the incoming volume to modulate different parameters in different plugins. So we use that performance that I did in the recording to process the sound with different plugins later in this chain. So here we use the vocoders to add a little bit more tonal character to the sound, and then we have a manipulator. This is kind of subtle, but this is the first stage of using the volume as a trigger for something. So I modulate the harmonics here with the follower and some formants too. So we have it here and without it. So it's very subtle, this, but it just adds a little bit of tonal character to it. Next up we have Morph EQ. This is the same idea, so I modulate the shift here with the incoming volume. So what this means is that this pushes up all these different dots into the higher frequency ranges. So we will emphasize different higher parts of the frequency when the sound gets louder, and then it goes down, it emphasizes lower parts of the sound instead. So it sounds like this. So here, for example, without it. And with it. So, cool character to it. After that, I just compress the sound with, this is just a stock compressor in Reaper, and then a limiter. It doesn't do much, it just squashes the sound a bit. So my next step here is to just bounce that out, and the reason that I do that is I want like a clean perspective of the sound, almost like the feeling of getting to a milestone. All right, and now I'm here, what's next? Am I done? Should I do something more? And from here I can duplicate this sound, and that's exactly what I did over here. I can have a lot of peace of mind when I do it, because I can always go back to this stage where I felt, well, this is kind of a good spot. I think this is really nice, but well, can I push it a little bit further? If these experiments that's going on this track just goes terribly wrong, that they often do, I can just go back to this stage that I have bounced out from this process here. So it's a nice way to work, I think, at least to me, when I feel like, all right, I don't know exactly where to take this. Am I done? Am I not? Bounce it out, just duplicate the track so you have something to jump off from and start new experiments with. And another benefit of doing this is that you can start to like process this with like stretching it in different ways and stuff like that. And you can't really do that if you have everything like in a long process chain. So I really like to work like that. So what I did here was that I continued the process a little bit more. So another vocal rider just evens out the envelopes a little bit more. And then I use multipass here. And this is a cool idea that I have, that have multiple different bands within multipass, and then you frequency shift them different amounts. So you can see the high band here is shifted down 298 hertz, the mid band here is shifted up 98 hertz, and the low band here is shifted just 25 hertz. And then we have some movement of these different bands with LFOs, and then I also have a formant filter here in the end, that again the same kind of idea, that we're modulating that with the incoming volume. So without this, it sounds like this here. And with it, I like that, so I just continue with that. So I did the same thing once again, and I bounced it out into this instead. And I just edited out the stuff that I didn't like from it, and then I had this sound, and I felt it was good, but it didn't really represent the small body of this Velociraptor. So I just pitched it up 1 octave, or basically I just play it back at double speed. So played out double speed, it equals that you're playing it back 1 octave up. The final version of this process became this. And that felt like something that I could work with. And then I knew that I can pitch it up even further and speed it up even more, or slow it down even more, depending on what I needed for the design. Now you can very clearly hear all that noise that I talked about earlier, that I should have removed when I recorded it. As I said, if you do this in a real project, denoise it, because you're squashing it quite a lot. At least I do. So I really like this, but this has like one part of the vocalization that I liked, and it has like this stuttering, gnarly, like rhythmical, like glitchy sounds almost, that I felt was really appropriate. But I felt it lacked some more tonal elements that I wanted also. So I did one more recording, and that was the hip movement that I talked about a little bit earlier. So it's the same idea. I do one long pass of recordings of the hip movements, of just bending the hips of the Barbie dolls. So they sounds like this. So, nothing super crazy. A lot of noise here also that I should have removed that I didn't. I like this because of the tonal character of it, and I felt that they could work well together when I start to blend them later in the editing process. So I just EQ'd it a little bit, removed the low end, compressed it, and then used the manipulator. And here I modulated the same idea. I used the incoming volume to modulate something. Here I modulate the formants of this, which gives it this character. So without that, that is more like almost like a rubber duck or something. But when we bring this in, it just brings out so much character and almost like different, like it feels like more like a language when you work like this. So I really like that, and after that it's just a limiter, and then I bounced that out, and then I just took this sausage file of this and this sausage file of this and brought them into this editing group here and started to play around with them. So the final step here is to edit these like sausage files of designed sources into the vocalization itself with the Velociraptors. So if we bring out the video here. So I have this set up like this. One group here, one group here, one group here. All of these has a bunch of layers underneath them that represents the different bits and pieces of the vocalization of the Velociraptor. We can mute these. And they are going into this Velociraptor design group here, and then that is routed into this tonal group return track here, and everything is going into a limiter. It's just a little bit of reverb there. So yeah, the basic idea here is to try to find bits and pieces in those long sounds that we have processed. So it looks like this. Here is the full sausage file that we have bounced out, and I just picked a tiny bit of that. It's a piece of this part here that I have chosen to use here, and that's like true for all of these. So I don't use anything else for this edit than the sounds that we have created in the design part here. No additional sound effects from any libraries or anything like that. So it's just different parts of that. I did a little bit of more processing to some parts, but it's basically just a little bit of EQing, a little bit of compression again. No big changes at all. The thing that I do here is that I edit the files and then I stretch them in different ways. So with this example, that sounds like this. It's pitched up 12 semitones, so it almost plays double speed again. It's a really fast version. And this is pitched up 1 semitone and just edited together with other stuff. This is pitched up 12 semitones. And this is like slower version. And the way I do this is that I try to understand what is the story about here. So this little guy here is basically kind of pissed off at his friends who just runs around and plays with different balls and stuff. And their human daddy is coming into the room, and he is just trying to like get everyone to get their shit together and listen to their daddy basically. So he's just kind of mad and has that like really rapid, it's almost like he's yelling at them a little bit. So if we take a look at it without any sound, it looks like this. Yeah, it's very much, hey guys, come on here, don't run away, don't do all the dumb stuff. We have to like show off in a good way for our dad, basically, and listen to what he has to say. So that's what I think of. I want that like kind of not aggressive, but really urgent expression in his vocalization. And I also want to emphasize that he is really small, and he has like this stuttering in his cheek, like da 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 So I want that, but I also want like some tonal expression in it. So that's like my framework when I do it, and then I just start to experiment with the sounds. And it's kind of nice to work like this because now I almost have already decided restrictions for this, that okay, I have these two long sausage files, that's what I have to work with. One more noisy, more rhythmical part, and one that's more tonal. And then I can just start to blend them, start to stretch them, but that's what I have to work with basically. So if we take this just first section here and take a listen to that, and I just play through the different samples and you can hear what they all bring to the table. So really like tonal weird sound, complemented with rhythmical sound, lower rhythmical sound, very stuttery, glitchy sound. So they all just brings a little bit different textures to the table, and together they sound like this. And yeah, it could be better. Of course, it's not perfect in any way or so, but it came out kind of cool. The next section here is the same idea. Stuttering. More stuttering that just follows his cheek movements. Just blend different stuff here into the design final version, so we can listen to both these two together. So that one, when his friend runs across him, he wants like rah, rah. So here we have a longer element of vocalization. Hey guys, here like basically talking to everyone here. So a longer one, and then he tries to get the attention of the guy that runs through him, so it's a shorter one. And then we have the final one here where he just had enough, basically. So it's a long one where he just basically yells at all his friends. And take a listen to all of these individual too. And then we have second part. So if we listen to them all together. So on the group here, I have a multipass. It's the same idea again, but now since we have layered these together, we have like new envelopes. So all these layers are creating this envelope on this group here. And that group envelope, so to speak, is, I use that to trigger as a trigger of this resonator. So this goes up a tiny bit and down a tiny bit depending on the incoming volume. So if you take a listen to that with and without. Without. Really subtle, but just adds a little bit more tonality to it. After that I have vocal synth, and it's the same idea here. I modulate the shift based on the incoming volume. Without. And with. Just shapes it a little bit more and just glues it together to become one more cohesive sound instead of multiple different ones. And then we have tonal layer here. This changes things kind of dramatically. Without that, it would sound like this. So this stutters up the sound with a stutter here, and then I modulate the speed of this LFO here that modulates this gain here, and that creates that stuttering effect. So depending on the incoming volume, this gets modulated up here. And then we have two different format filters in parallel here. So these goes in parallel into this serial. These two format filters then gets processed by this stuttering gain here. And all is modulated by the incoming volume once again. So without this and with this. So it changes everything quite a lot. And then a reverb and then a final limiter. So yes, have final listen to the final design here. Yeah, and that's basically it. Alright, that was how I turned those Barbie dolls into the Velociraptors. It's basically 3 steps. You record it, you design the source, and then you edit it. But the first step is of course to just find a source that you feel is inspiring to you. And as I said before, this is a really great exercise and really useful knowledge that you get out of it when you start to work with your sample libraries together with on different projects where you use your sound design to visuals. You start to train your ears and your brain to like find the different textures and emotions in different sound that you really want. And then you get so much simpler workflow when you start to find those sound in your sample libraries when you're working on those big projects. So yeah, highly recommend to try out and work like this and do exercises like this. So I hope you liked it. If you want a different perspective of how you can use the sound around you and create different sound design with that, I have this video for you where I use just my iPhone and record sounds around me and create a redesign of the UI sounds in Baldur's Gate with that. So go ahead and watch that next, and until I see you next time, have a really great time.